The slave market stank of unwashed bodies and desperation, but Bennett Ashford forced himself to walk through it anyway, his jaw tight and his hands clenched at his sides. He had sworn he would never set foot in such a place, had argued with the town council for years about shutting it down. But here he stood with 3 copper coins burning a hole in his pocket, and a plan that made his stomach churn with equal parts righteousness and terror. The orc woman stood at the far end of the platform, her wrists bound with iron that had rubbed the green skin beneath raw and bleeding. She did not cry or plead like some of the others. Instead, she stared straight ahead with eyes the color of amber, her jaw set and her small tusks just visible between her lips. Someone had beaten her recently. Purple bruises mottled her arms and one eye was swollen nearly shut. The sackcloth dress they had given her hung in tatters, barely preserving her modesty. She could not have been more than 20 summers old. Bennett felt rage surge through him hot and wild. The slave trader, a greasy man with gaps in his teeth, was calling out prices with the enthusiasm of someone selling livestock. 3 gold coins for the human girl who wept into her hands. 5 silver for the dwarf boy who looked too young to be away from his mother. And for the orc woman because no one wanted her, because orcs were considered barely better than animals, the trader had grown frustrated. 3 copper coins, the man shouted, his voice cracking with exasperation. 3 copper coins and she is yours. Good for field work if you beat her regular. Good for other things too if you are not particular about your bed mates. The crowd laughed, a cruel sound that made Bennett's skin crawl. He pushed through the press of bodies, pulled the 3 coins from his pocket, and slammed them down on the platform edge so hard the wood cracked. "Sold," he said through gritted teeth. The trader's eyes widened with surprise and then narrowed with suspicion. "You serious, master? She is an orc. They are all savages beneath the surface. First chance she gets, she will slit your throat and dance in your blood." "Then I suppose I had better watch my throat," Bennett replied coldly. He held out his hand. "The key to her shackles, if you please." The transaction took less than 5 minutes. The trader was so eager to be rid of her that he practically threw the key at Bennett and shoved the orc woman off the platform. She stumbled, weak from what must have been days without proper food or water, but caught herself before she fell. Bennett unlocked the shackles as quickly as his shaking hands would allow, and they clattered to the cobblestones with a sound like breaking chains. The orc woman stared at him with those amber eyes, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. She was taller than him by half a head, broad-shouldered and muscular despite her malnourishment. Up close he could see more details. The slight upturn of her nose, the way her dark hair had been hacked short and uneven, the old scars that spoke of a hard life. "Can you walk?" Bennett asked quietly. She said nothing, but after a moment she nodded once. "My wagon is this way. Come with me, please. I promise I will explain everything once we are away from this cursed place." He had expected her to run or to attack him or to simply collapse. Instead, she followed him through the market with her head held high, ignoring the stares and the muttered curses, ignoring the children who threw stones and the women who spat at her feet. Bennett positioned himself between her and the worst of it, taking a rock to his shoulder that had been meant for her head. He did not complain. His wagon waited at the edge of the market square, hitched to his old mare Rosie who whickered a greeting. Bennett gestured for the orc woman to climb into the back where he had piled blankets and sacks of grain. She hesitated, her eyes darting between him and the wagon as if waiting for the trap to spring shut. "I am not going to hurt you," Bennett said, keeping his voice level and calm the way he would with a spooked horse. "My name is Bennett Ashford. I own a farm about 2 hours north of here. I came to this market today specifically to buy someone out of slavery and offer them honest work and a safe place to live. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I am asking you to give me a chance to prove I mean what I say." The orc woman's eyes searched his face for a long moment. Then, moving stiffly, she climbed into the wagon and settled herself as far from him as the space would allow. Bennett pulled off his own coat and held it out to her. "You are cold and your dress is falling apart. Please take this." She took the coat with hands that trembled slightly, wrapping it around her shoulders. Bennett climbed up onto the driver's bench, took up the reins, and urged Rosie into motion. The wagon rattled over the cobblestones and then onto the dirt road that led out of town and into the countryside. They rode in silence for the better part of an hour. Bennett did not push for conversation. He kept his attention on the road and on the rhythm of Rosie's steady gait, trying to organize his thoughts. He had planned this for weeks, ever since he had learned that the slave market would be coming through. He had scraped together what little money he could spare, had prepared a room in his farmhouse, had rehearsed what he would say. But now that the moment was here, all his careful words had fled. The orc woman broke the silence first. Her voice was low and rough, as if she had not used it in some time. "Why did you buy me?" Bennett glanced back at her. "Because slavery is wrong. Because every person deserves freedom and dignity. Because I needed help on my farm and I would rather pay an honest wage than support that vile trade. You could have bought the human girl or the dwarf boy. Why an orc?" "Because no one else would," Bennett said simply. "Because the price was lowest for you, which meant I could afford it. And because I am tired of people treating your kind like monsters when the real monsters are the ones buying and selling people like commodities." She was quiet again for a long moment. When she spoke next, there was something raw and painful in her voice. "You said you own a farm." "What kind of farm?" "Wheat mostly. Some vegetables. 12 chickens, 3 pigs, and a cow. It is not much, but it is mine. Well, it will be mine once I finish paying off the debt my father left me." Bennett rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly self-conscious. "I lost my parents to fever 2 winters ago. I have been running the place alone since then, and I will not lie to you, it has been hard. The work is more than one person can manage properly. I need help and I am willing to pay for it." "Pay," the orc woman repeated, as if testing the word. "Room and board, plus a silver coin each month. More if the harvest is good. You would have your own room with a door that locks from the inside. You could leave whenever you wanted. I would not stop you." "Why should I believe you?" It was a fair question. Bennett thought carefully about his answer. "You should not yet. I am a stranger who bought you in a slave market. For all you know, I am lying through my teeth and planning terrible things. All I can do is show you through my actions that I am telling the truth. Give me a week. If at the end of that week you want to leave, I will give you supplies and coin enough to get you somewhere safe." The orc woman did not respond, but he saw her shoulders relax slightly beneath his coat. It was something. The sun was setting by the time they reached the farm, painting the wheat fields gold and crimson. The farmhouse was small but well-maintained, with a stone foundation and a thatched roof that Bennett had repaired himself just last month. Smoke curled from the chimney where he had left the fire banked that morning. The barn stood a short distance away, and beyond that, the field stretched toward the tree line. Bennett helped the orc woman down from the wagon, noting how she swayed on her feet. "When did you last eat?" he asked. 2 days ago, maybe 3. I lost count." He cursed under his breath. "Come inside. I will get you some food and water, and then I will show you where you will be sleeping." The inside of the farmhouse was simple but comfortable. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace, a sturdy wooden table, and shelves lined with jars of preserved food. 2 doors led off to bedrooms, and a ladder climbed to the loft where Bennett stored grain and supplies. Bennett guided the orc woman to a chair, and she sank into it gratefully. He ladled water from the bucket by the door into a cup and handed it to her. She drank it so quickly he immediately refilled it. While she drank, he sliced bread and cheese and added dried apples to the plate. It was not fancy, but it was wholesome and filling. The orc woman ate with careful deliberation, as if afraid the food would be taken away. Bennett busied himself at the fireplace, adding wood and stirring the stew that had been simmering all day. When he looked back, the plate was empty. More. He offered. She hesitated, then nodded. He filled a bowl with stew and set it before her along with a spoon. She ate more slowly this time, and he saw some of the hollowness leave her eyes. When she had finished, Bennett cleared the dishes and then gestured to one of the bedroom doors. "That room there is yours. It has a bed, a chest for your belongings, and a window that opens. The door has a lock, and I will give you the only key. I sleep in the other bedroom. The outhouse is behind the barn, and there is a rain barrel where you can wash. Tomorrow I will heat water for a proper bath if you want one." The orc woman stood slowly, her hand resting on the back of the chair as if she needed it for balance. "You have not asked my name." Bennett paused. "You are right. I am sorry. May I know your name?" "Grenna," she said. "My name is Grenna." "Grenna," Bennett repeated, testing the sound of it. "It is a good name. I am glad to meet you, Grenna, even if the circumstances are horrible." Something that might have been the ghost of a smile flickered across her face and then vanished. She walked to the bedroom door, pushed it open, and stood on the threshold for a long moment. Bennett crossed to his own room, rummaged through a trunk, and emerged with a key which he held out to her. As promised. The only key. Grenna took it with a hand that shook. She met his eyes, and he saw confusion there and disbelief and something that might have been the faintest spark of hope. "Why?" she whispered. Bennett did not pretend to misunderstand. "Because it is right. Because you deserve better than what the world has given you. And because I need help, and I think we might be able to help each other." He took a step back, giving her space. "Get some rest, Grenna. Tomorrow will be easier." She went into the room and closed the door. Bennett heard the soft click of the lock engaging. He released a breath he had not realized he was holding, suddenly exhausted. He banked the fire, washed the dishes, and retired to his own room where he lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and hoping desperately that he had done the right thing. Morning came with roosters crowing and the pale light of dawn filtering through the windows. Bennett rose, dressed, and made his way to the kitchen where he started breakfast. He was frying eggs when he heard Grenna's door open. She emerged slowly, still wearing his coat over her ragged dress. Her hair was disheveled and there were dark circles under her eyes, but she looked more alert than she had the night before. "Good morning," Bennett said. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in a long time," Grenna admitted. She hovered near her doorway, uncertain. "Breakfast will be ready in a few minutes. After we eat, I thought I might show you around the farm and we could discuss what kind of work you would be comfortable doing. But first—" He set down his spatula and crossed to a trunk by the door. From it, he pulled out a bundle of cloth. "These were my mother's. She was a tall woman, so they should fit you better than anything of mine. The dress is plain but sturdy, and there are undergarments and a shawl as well. You are welcome to them." Grenna took the bundle with a reverence that made Bennett's chest ache. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You can change after breakfast, and then I will heat water for that bath I promised. There is soap and a comb as well. Take all the time you need." They ate together at the table, and though the silence was still awkward, it felt less oppressive than it had the night before. When they had finished, Bennett set a large pot of water over the fire to heat, and then showed Grenna to the rain barrel and the washing area he had set up behind the barn. It was private, enclosed by a fence he had built specifically for this purpose. While Grenna bathed and changed, Bennett threw himself into morning chores. He fed the chickens, collected eggs, mucked out the pig pen, and milked the cow. The physical work helped settle his nerves. When he returned to the house, Grenna was waiting outside, transformed. His mother's dress fit her well, the dark blue fabric complementing her green skin. She had braided her short hair back from her face, revealing the elegant points of her ears and the strong lines of her jaw. The bruises were still visible, stark reminders of her recent ordeal, but she stood straighter now, with more confidence. "You look well," Bennett said, and then immediately felt foolish for the inadequacy of the words. Grenna glanced down at herself. "It has been a long time since I wore anything clean. Your mother had good taste. She did. She would be glad to know her things were being put to good use." Bennett gestured toward the fields. "Shall we?" He showed her the farm from one end to the other, explaining his operation as they walked. The wheat was growing well and would need to be harvested in another month. The vegetable garden required daily weeding and watering. The animals needed feeding and care. The barn needed mucking. The fence along the eastern field needed mending. There was always work, more work than he could handle alone. Grenna listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood farming better than he had expected. When he commented on this, she nodded. "I grew up in a clan that farmed the foothills north of here. Before the war, before we were scattered. I know how to work the land." "The war," Bennett repeated. He had been a child during the Orc Wars, barely old enough to remember the soldiers marching through town and his mother weeping over news of casualties. "Is that how you ended up enslaved?" Grenna's expression hardened. "My clan was destroyed when I was 15. The soldiers killed everyone they could catch and sold the rest of us. I have been a slave for 5 years, passed from owner to owner. Some were worse than others. The last one was a merchant who beat his slaves for entertainment. When he died last month, his son sold us all rather than deal with the expense of keeping us. 5 years. Bennett felt sick. "I am sorry, Grenna. You should never have had to endure that." She shrugged, a gesture that tried for nonchalance but did not quite achieve it. "It is the way of the world. Orcs and humans do not mix. We are the enemy." "You are not my enemy," Bennett said firmly. "And you are not a slave anymore. You are a free woman who I am hiring to work on my farm. I want to make that official." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of parchment he had prepared the night before. "This is a contract. It states your terms of employment, your wages, and your rights. It gives you legal protection and proves that you are here of your own free will. I have already signed it. If you agree to the terms, you can sign as well." Grenna stared at the parchment as if it were a poisonous snake. "I cannot read." "That is all right. I will read it to you." Bennett read the contract aloud, slowly and clearly, explaining each clause. The terms were simple and fair. Grenna would work 6 days a week helping with farm labor in exchange for room, board, and a silver coin each month. She would have 1 day each week to rest and do as she pleased. She could leave at any time with a week's notice. Bennett would provide her with appropriate clothing and supplies. He would not strike her, abuse her, or deny her basic necessities. The contract would last for 1 year, at which point they could renegotiate or part ways. When he finished reading, Grenna was quiet for a long time. "This is real?" She finally asked. "You truly mean all of this?" "I do. I will admit that I benefit from this arrangement as well. I need help and I cannot afford to pay more than I am offering, but I hope it is enough to give you a fresh start." Grenna reached out and took the parchment from his hands, holding it carefully as if it were made of glass. "I will sign," Bennett produced a quill and ink. Grenna could not write her name, so he guided her hand through the letters, his larger fingers steadying hers. When it was done, they both stood looking at the signed contract for a moment. "There," Bennett said. "Now it is official. Welcome to Ashford Farm, Grenna. You are hired." For the first time since he had met her, Grenna smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it transformed her face. "Thank you, Bennett. I will work hard, I promise." "I believe you. Now, how about we start with something easy? The garden needs weeding, and I could use an extra pair of hands." They worked together through the morning and into the afternoon, side by side in the garden. Bennett had worried that conversation would be difficult, but he found that Grenna was easy to talk to once she began to relax. She told him about her clan, about the traditions and stories she remembered from her childhood. She had been training to be a healer before the war, learning the properties of herbs and the songs that her people believed helped plants grow strong. In turn, Bennett told her about his parents, about growing up on the farm and learning the trade from his father. He told her about the fever that had taken them both within days of each other, about the loneliness and grief that had nearly broken him. He had not spoken about it to anyone in months, but something about Grenna's steady presence made the words come easier. By the time the sun began to set, they had cleared half the garden and established a comfortable working rhythm. Bennett called a halt and they returned to the house, both tired but satisfied. Over dinner, Bennett broached a subject that had been on his mind all day. "Tomorrow is market day in town. I usually go to sell eggs and buy supplies. You are welcome to come with me if you like, or you can stay here." "Either way is fine." Grenna's expression shuddered. "People in town will not want to see an orc." "Some will not," Bennett admitted. "But my friends will not judge you, and I do not care what the bigots think. However, I understand if you would prefer to avoid it. The choice is yours." "I will come," Grenna said after a moment. "I will not hide, and I should see what I am facing if I am to live in this area." Bennett nodded, both proud of her courage and worried about how the townspeople would react. "We will leave early in the morning." That night, Bennett lay in bed and listened to the sounds of the house settling. For the first time in 2 years, he was not alone. It was a strange feeling, both comforting and unsettling. He hoped Grenna would be safe here, hoped he could give her the peace she deserved. Only time would tell. The market square was crowded with farmers and merchants, all hawking their wares under the bright morning sun. Bennett guided the wagon to his usual spot and began setting up his stall, arranging baskets of eggs and bundles of herbs. Grenna helped him unload, moving efficiently despite the stares that followed her every movement. The reactions were about what Bennett had expected. Some people looked away quickly, pretending not to see her. Others stared with open hostility. A few mothers pulled their children closer, whispering warnings about the dangerous orc. But there were also those who simply nodded a greeting or went about their business without comment. The first person to approach their stall was an old woman named Martha who ran the bakery. She took one look at Grenna and smiled. "Well now, Bennett Ashford, who is this?" "This is Grenna," Bennett said. "She is working on my farm now. Is that so? Well, it is about time you got some help. You have been working yourself to the bone." Martha turned to Grenna and held out a gnarled hand. "Pleased to meet you, dear. Any friend of Bennett's is a friend of mine." Grenna shook her hand cautiously, clearly surprised by the friendly reception. "Thank you, madam. Call me Martha. And you come by the bakery later, I will give you some fresh bread to take home." Not everyone was so kind. Around midday, a group of young men approached the stall, their eyes hard and their intentions clear. The leader, a blacksmith's apprentice named Cole, leaned against their table and sneered at Grenna. "What is this, Ashford? You keeping an orc pet now? That is disgusting." Bennett straightened to his full height, his jaw tight. Grenna is my employee and you will speak to her with respect. Move along, Cole. Employee, Cole laughed. Is that what we are calling it? Everyone knows orcs are good for only two things, fighting and rutting. Which one are you using her for? The blood drained from Grenna's face and her hands clenched into fists. Bennett stepped between them, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. Apologize, now. Or what? Cole challenged. Or I will make you regret it. The threat hung in the air. Cole's friends shifted nervously, suddenly less certain. Cole himself seemed to realize he had pushed too far. He spat on the ground near Bennett's feet and walked away, muttering curses under his breath. Bennett turned to Grenna, who was shaking with barely controlled rage. I am sorry. That should not have happened. It always happens, Grenna said bitterly. This is what I expected. It is still wrong, and for what it is worth, Cole is an idiot that most people avoid anyway. The rest of the market day passed without further incident. They sold all their eggs and Bennett bought the supplies they needed: flour, salt, nails, and seeds for the fall planting. As they were packing up to leave, Martha appeared with a basket full of fresh bread and pastries. For you too, she said warmly. You both look like you could use some sweetness in your lives. Grenna accepted the basket with a look of wonder. Thank you, Martha. You are very kind. Kindness costs nothing, dear. You take care of our Bennett now. He is a good man and he has been alone too long. On the ride home, Grenna was quiet. Bennett let her have her silence, understanding that the day had been difficult, but when they were halfway back to the farm, she spoke. Why did you defend me? You barely know me. Bennett considered his answer carefully. Because it was the right thing to do. Because you deserve to be defended. And because I meant what I said yesterday. You are not my enemy and you are not beneath me. You are a person who deserves dignity and respect. Even though I am an orc. Especially because you are an orc. The way your people have been treated is shameful. I cannot change the past, but I can do my part to make the present a little better. Grenna looked at him for a long moment, her amber eyes searching his face. You are a strange man, Bennett Ashford. So I have been told, he smiled slightly. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I have not decided yet. Days turned into weeks and slowly, carefully, a routine established itself. Bennett and Grenna worked the farm together, rising with the sun and laboring until dusk. Grenna proved to be an excellent worker, strong and knowledgeable. She had a gift with the animals, a gentle touch that calmed even the most skittish creatures. The garden flourished under her care, and Bennett often caught her singing to the plants in the orcish tongue, old songs that she said her grandmother had taught her. In the evenings, they sat together at the table and shared meals. The conversations grew longer and more comfortable. Grenna told Bennett about orcish customs, about the complex social structures of the clans and the honor codes that govern behavior. Bennett shared stories from his childhood, tales of harvest festivals and winter storms, and the time he had accidentally set the barn on fire trying to impress a girl. One evening, about a month after Grenna's arrival, Bennett brought out a crate from the loft. Inside were books, some his mother's and some his own, carefully preserved. I know you said you cannot read, but I could teach you if you would like. Grenna's eyes widened. You would do that, of course. Reading opens up whole worlds. Everyone should have the chance to learn. They started that very night, working by candlelight at the kitchen table. Bennett began with the alphabet, showing Grenna how each letter made its sound. She was a quick learner, hungry for knowledge. Within a week, she could write her name without help. Within 2 weeks, she was sounding out simple words. As the days passed, Bennett found himself looking forward to these evening lessons more than anything else. He loved watching Grenna's face light up when she successfully read a new word. Loved the way she bent over the page with fierce concentration. loved the sound of her laughter when she made a mistake and had to try again. It was during one of these lessons that Bennett realized he was falling in love with her. The thought struck him like lightning, sudden and undeniable. He looked at Grenna, at the way the candlelight caught in her dark hair and cast shadows across her green skin, and felt his heart constrict with an emotion so powerful it took his breath away. She was beautiful, he realized, not in spite of her orcish features but because of them. The strength in her arms, the sharpness of her tusks, the fierce intelligence in her eyes, all of it combined into something that made him want to reach across the table and take her hand and never let go. But he did not. He could not. The power imbalance between them was too great, the history too fraught. She worked for him, depended on him for shelter and safety. To pursue her romantically would be to abuse that position, to put her in an impossible situation. So Bennett buried his feelings deep and tried to focus on being a good employer and a better friend. If Grenna noticed his growing affection, she gave no sign. She remained friendly but distant, always maintaining a careful space between them. At night, Bennett heard her lock her door, and he understood why. She had been hurt too many times to trust easily. The wheat harvest came at the end of summer, and it was every bit as grueling as Bennett had warned. They worked from dawn until long after dark, cutting the wheat by hand and binding it into sheaves. Grenna matched him stroke for stroke, never complaining even when Bennett could see she was exhausted. On the third day of harvesting, a storm rolled in suddenly, threatening to ruin the crop. "We have to get it all under cover," Bennett shouted over the rising wind. "Everything we can carry." They worked frantically, hauling sheaves to the barn as the first raindrops began to fall. The sky opened up when they were halfway done, soaking them both to the skin. Lightning cracked overhead and thunder rolled across the fields. But they did not stop. They could not afford to lose the crop. When the last sheaf was finally safe in the barn, Bennett and Grenna collapsed together on a pile of hay, both panting and drenched. Rain pounded on the roof and wind howled around the corners of the building. Bennett started to laugh, half from relief and half from the sheer absurdity of it all. "We did it," he gasped. "We actually did it." Grenna laughed too, a sound so rare and precious that Bennett wanted to bottle it and keep it forever. "You are insane, Bennett Ashford. Only an insane person would try to beat a storm. An insane person and an orc woman who is apparently just as crazy as I am." They grinned at each other, filthy and soaked and triumphant. The moment stretched between them, electric and charged. Bennett became suddenly, painfully aware of how close they were, of the way Grenna's wet dress clung to her body, of the way her eyes reflected the lightning outside. He wanted to kiss her so badly it physically hurt, but he did not. He cleared his throat and stood up, offering her a hand. "We should get back to the house and dry off before we catch our deaths." The moment broke, and Grenna nodded, accepting his hand. They ran through the rain to the farmhouse, laughing like children. Inside, Bennett built up the fire while Grenna changed into dry clothes. They wrapped themselves in blankets and sat before the flames, drinking hot tea and listening to the storm rage outside. "Thank you," Grenna said quietly. "For what?" "For trusting me to help with the harvest, for treating me like a partner instead of a servant, for everything." Bennett looked at her, at the firelight dancing across her face, and felt his heart crack open. "You have earned that trust 10 times over, Grenna. This farm would have failed without you. You saved it as much as I did." She met his eyes and something passed between them, something unspoken but profound. Grenna opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. The moment slipped away and they returned to their tea in silence. That night, Bennett lay awake and stared at his ceiling, his heart pounding and his mind racing. He was in love with Grenna, deeply, irrevocably in love, and he had no idea what to do about it. Autumn arrived with cooler temperatures and leaves turning gold and red. The harvest had been good, better than Bennett had managed in the previous 2 years combined. He sold the wheat at market for a fair price and found himself, for the first time since his parents' deaths, with a small financial cushion. He paid Grenna her wages faithfully each month and bought her warmer clothes for the coming winter. One morning in late September, Bennett was mending the fence when a rider came galloping up the road. It was Thomas, a neighbor who lived 2 farms over. His face was pale with fear. "Bennett," he gasped, pulling his horse to a halt, "there are raiders in the area. They hit the Morrison farm last night, burned the barn, and took everything they could carry. We are forming a watch. I need you to come help patrol tonight." Bennett's blood ran cold. Raiders were a constant danger on the frontier, bandits who preyed on isolated farms. "How many?" "At least 6, maybe more. They are well armed and dangerous. We need every able-bodied man." "I will be there." Bennett glanced toward the farmhouse where Grenna was preparing lunch. "What about my farm while I am gone? Bring your orc if you trust her to fight. We could use an extra hand, or leave her here with a weapon. Just make sure she can defend herself if they come this way." After Thomas left, Bennett went inside and explained the situation to Grenna. She listened with a grim expression, her hand unconsciously moving to the knife Bennett had given her for kitchen work. "I can fight," she said. "My clan trained all its members in combat. I am not helpless." "I know you are not, but I will not lie to you, Grenna. This could be very dangerous. If you would rather stay here and barricade yourself in the house, I will not think less of you." Grenna shook her head firmly. "We are partners, remember. If you are going to face danger, then so am I. Besides, someone needs to watch your back." Bennett felt a surge of gratitude and affection so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. "All right, but we do this smart. We stick together and we do not take unnecessary risks." "Agreed, agreed." They spent the afternoon preparing. Bennett oiled his father's old sword and made sure his bow was properly strung. Grenna fashioned a spear from a sturdy branch and one of the haying knives, binding it with strips of leather. When evening came, they set out to join the patrol. A dozen men from neighboring farms had gathered at the crossroads, armed with whatever weapons they could find. They formed into groups of 3 or 4 and spread out to cover the most likely approach routes. Bennett and Grenna paired with Thomas and took up a position overlooking the northern road. The night was cold and clear, with a half-moon providing enough light to see by. They waited in tense silence, watching and listening. Hours passed. Bennett's feet grew numb and his hands stiff. He was beginning to think the raiders had moved on when Thomas suddenly tensed. "There," he whispered, pointing. Bennett followed his gaze and saw movement on the road, dark shapes moving with purpose toward the farms. At least 8 men, heavily armed and leading pack horses. "Raiders, without question." "We have to warn the others," Thomas said, already moving. "I will go. You 2 keep them in sight." He disappeared into the darkness at a run. Bennett and Grenna crept closer, using the trees for cover. The raiders were moving slowly, clearly scouting for their next target. Bennett recognized the turn in the road ahead. It led to the Wilson farm where 3 small children lived. "We have to slow them down," Bennett whispered. "Thomas needs time to gather the others." "How?" Grenna asked. Bennett thought quickly. "We bluff. Make them think we are a larger force than we are. Come on." They circled around to get ahead of the raiders, moving as quietly as they could. When they reached a narrow point in the road where trees crowded close on both sides, Bennett knocked an arrow and stepped into the open. Grenna flanked him, her spear ready. "That is far enough," Bennett called out, his voice carrying through the night. "This area is defended." Turn back now or face the consequences." The raiders stopped, surprised. Their leader, a scarred man with a cruel face, laughed. "Defended by who? I see two people. Stand aside and we might let you live." "You see two people in front of you," Bennett replied, praying his voice would not shake. "There are a dozen more in the trees. You are surrounded and outmatched. This is your only warning." The leader hesitated, clearly uncertain. His men shifted nervously, peering into the shadows. For a moment, Bennett thought the bluff might actually work. Then one of the raiders spotted Grenna and laughed. "That one is an orc. Since when do humans and orcs fight together? You are lying, farm boy." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Rush them. They are alone." Everything happened at once. Bennett loosed his arrow, catching one raider in the shoulder. Grenna surged forward with her spear, moving with a speed and grace that spoke of extensive training. She caught another raider across the arm before spinning away from a sword swing. Bennett dropped his bow and drew his sword, barely parrying a blow that would have taken his head off. The raiders pressed in, trying to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Bennett fought desperately, relying on his father's training and pure adrenaline. Next to him, Grenna was a whirlwind of controlled violence, her spear deflecting blows and finding gaps in the raiders' defenses. They held for what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than a minute. Then, Bennett heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the shouts of approaching reinforcements. Thomas had brought the other farmers at a run, and suddenly the raiders found themselves facing a real fight. The bandits broke and fled, dragging their wounded with them. The farmers gave chase for a short distance to make sure they kept running, then returned to the crossroads victorious. Bennett leaned heavily on his sword, breathing hard and shaking with reaction. Thomas clapped him on the shoulder. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I have ever seen. You held off 8 raiders with just the 2 of you." "It was mostly her," Bennett admitted, nodding toward Grenna, who stood a short distance away, calmly cleaning her spear. "I have never seen anyone fight like that." Several of the farmers were staring at Grenna with new respect. One of them, a gruff old veteran named Hector, approached her. "Where did you learn to fight, orc?" Grenna met his eyes steadily. "My clan. We believed everyone should know how to defend themselves and their loved ones." Hector grunted. "Good philosophy. You probably saved lives tonight. The Wilsons will want to thank you." The patrol stayed out until dawn to make sure the raiders did not return, then dispersed to their farms. Bennett and Grenna walked home together in the growing light, both exhausted but unharmed. When they reached the farmhouse, Bennett suddenly found he could not hold back any longer. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "You could have stayed safe, but you put yourself in danger to protect people who have treated you terribly. That took courage I cannot even fathom." Grenna shook her head. "These are your neighbors. You care about them, so I care about them. That is what partnership means." "It is more than that, though, is it not?" Bennett took a step closer, his heart pounding. "Grenna, I need to tell you something. I know the timing is terrible, and I know this is probably a horrible idea, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I have feelings for you, deep feelings. I think I am in love with you." Grenna stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "Bennett, I know," he rushed on. "I know all the reasons why this is impossible. You work for me. There is a power imbalance. Humans and orcs are not supposed to be together. I am not asking you to feel the same way, I just needed you to know the truth." For a long moment, Grenna said nothing. Then slowly she reached out and took his hand. Her palm was rough with calluses and warm against his. "You are a fool, Bennett Ashford." Bennett's heart sank. "I know. I am sorry. I should not have said anything." "No." Grenna squeezed his hand tighter. "You are a fool because you thought you were hiding it. I have known for weeks that you have feelings for me." The way you look at me, the way you find excuses to be near me, the way you smile when I learn a new word. I see it all. Oh, Bennett did not know whether to be embarrassed or hopeful. And you? How do you feel? Grenna's amber eyes searched his face. I am terrified, Bennett. Everything you said is true. This is dangerous and complicated and probably a mistake, but I also wake up every morning grateful that you are in my life. I look forward to our evenings together more than anything. When you defended me at the market, when you trusted me with the harvest, when you stood beside me tonight against the raiders, I felt things I did not think I was capable of feeling anymore. She took a shaky breath. I think I might be falling in love with you too. Bennett felt like his heart might burst. Really, really. But Bennett, we have to be careful. If people find out, there could be consequences, for both of us, but especially for you. I do not care what people think. I know you do not. That is part of what I love about you. But I care about your safety, and I need to know that you truly understand what you are asking for. I am not human. I am not what people expect. There will be judgment and hatred and obstacles we cannot even imagine yet. Bennett brought his free hand up to cup her face, his thumb gently tracing the line of her jaw. I know exactly what I am asking for. I am asking for you, Grenna. All of you, for as long as you will have me. I do not care if it is difficult. I do not care what anyone else thinks. I only care that we face it together. Grenna closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. When she opened them again, there were tears on her lashes. Together, she whispered. I like the sound of that. Bennett leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and perfect. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. So, Bennett said, still holding her hand. What do we do now? Now, Grenna replied, we take things slowly. We figure this out one day at a time. And we remember that we are partners in all things. I can do that, Bennett agreed. One day at a time. They went inside together, fingers intertwined, and began the next chapter of their lives. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Bennett's life. He and Grenna continued working the farm together, but now there was an added dimension to their relationship. They held hands while walking through the fields. They kissed in the barn when they thought no one was watching. They sat close together in the evenings, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's presence. They were careful to keep their relationship private, at least at first. When they went to town for market day, they maintained a professional distance, though Bennett caught himself slipping more than once. Martha noticed, of course. The old baker had sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She cornered Bennett one morning while Grenna was browsing the fabric stall. You are in love with her, Martha said bluntly. Bennett felt his face heat. Is it that obvious? To someone who is paying attention, yes. Does she feel the same way? She does. Martha nodded slowly. Good, you both deserve happiness. But Bennett, you need to be careful. There are people in this town who will not take kindly to a human and an orc being together. Cole and his friends especially. They are looking for an excuse to cause trouble. I know, we are being careful. Be more careful. And if you need allies, you know where to find me. Bennett hugged the old woman impulsively. Thank you, Martha. That means more than you know. As autumn deepened into winter, Bennett knew he wanted more than careful secrecy. He wanted a future with Grenna, a real future. He wanted to wake up next to her every morning and fall asleep beside her every night. He wanted to build a life together, openly and without shame. One evening in early November, as snow began to fall outside, Bennett built up the fire and brought out a bottle of wine he had been saving. Grenna raised an eyebrow. What is the occasion? No occasion. I just want to spend time with you. Bennett poured 2 glasses and handed her one. Grenna, we have been together for almost 2 months now, and they have been the best 2 months of my life. Grenna smiled softly. Mine too. I have been thinking about the future, about what I want and what we could build together. Bennett set down his glass and took her hands in his. I know we are taking things slowly and I respect that, but I need you to know that this is not a passing fancy for me. I am serious about you. About us. I want to spend my life with you if you will have me. Grenna's eyes glistened. Bennett, I want that too, more than I have ever wanted anything. But are you sure? Once people know about us, there is no going back. Your reputation will suffer, you might lose friends, life will be harder. I am sure. Whatever challenges we will face them together. That is what you said, remember, partners in all things. Partners, Grenna repeated. She leaned in and kissed him, deep and lingering. When she pulled back, she was smiling. All right, let us stop hiding. Let us build a life together, openly. Even if it means facing judgment and hostility, especially then. I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of hiding who I am and who I love. If the world has a problem with us being together, then the world can go to hell. Bennett laughed and pulled her into his arms. They sat together by the fire, planning their future. They would continue working the farm together, expanding it if they could. In the spring, they would build an addition to the farmhouse, creating a proper shared bedroom. They would face the town together, and if people could not accept them, then those people were not worth knowing. The next market day, Bennett and Grenna arrived holding hands. The reaction was immediate and intense. Some people simply stared. Others whispered behind their hands. A few turned away in disgust, but there were also those who nodded in understanding or offered small smiles of support. Cole and his friends appeared almost immediately, their faces twisted with anger. "What is this?" Cole demanded, pointing at their joined hands. "You are actually with that orc." "That is disgusting." "What is disgusting," Bennett replied calmly, "is your bigotry. Grenna and I are together, and if you have a problem with that, I do not particularly care." "You are a traitor to your own kind," another of Cole's friends spat. "No, I am in love. There is a difference." Cole stepped forward aggressively. "Someone should teach you a lesson about race mixing." Before Bennett could respond, a voice rang out across the market square. "Touch him and you will answer to me." It was Hector, the old veteran, with several other farmers behind him. Thomas was there, and the Wilson family, and half a dozen others who had been on the patrol the night they fought the raiders. "Grenna saved our lives," Thomas said firmly. "She fought beside us when she had no obligation to do so. Anyone who has a problem with her has a problem with all of us." Cole looked around at the assembled group and seemed to realize he was outnumbered. With a final glare, he turned and stalked away, his friends following. Bennett released a breath he had not realized he was holding. Hector approached and clapped Bennett on the shoulder. "You are a good man, Ashford. And you, Grenna, are a credit to your people. Anyone with eyes can see you two belong together." Other farmers and townspeople came forward to offer their support, or at least their acceptance. Not everyone was pleased, but the overt hostility was minimal. Martha appeared with a basket of pastries and a knowing smile. "I told you that you had allies," she said. That winter was hard, as winters on the frontier always were, but Bennett and Grenna faced it together. They kept the animals fed and the farmhouse warm. They read together by firelight and made love in the cold winter nights. They planned for the spring planting and dreamed about the future. In February, during a rare, warm spell, Bennett took Grenna to the spot where his parents were buried. It was a small plot on the hill overlooking the farm, marked with simple wooden crosses. "I wanted you to meet them," Bennett said. "In whatever way is possible. They would have liked you, Grenna. They would have approved of us." Grenna knelt and placed a small bundle of dried herbs at the base of the crosses. "It is an orcish tradition," she explained. "To honor the dead with plants, these are for protection and peace." Bennett knelt beside her, and together they paid their respects. When they rose, Bennett pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple silver with a green stone. "It was my mother's," he said. "My father gave it to her when they married. I know we cannot have a legal marriage, not with the laws as they are, but I want you to have this anyway. I want the world to know you are mine and I am yours." Grenna took the ring with shaking hands. "Bennett, marry me, Grenna, maybe not in a church or with a legal document, but in the ways that matter in our hearts and in our lives. Be my wife. Let me be your husband. Let us make this official in every way we can." Tears streamed down Grenna's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Bennett slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They kissed there on the hillside, with the wind blowing cold around them and the winter sun shining down. It was a perfect moment, crystalline and pure. They married themselves that evening in the farmhouse, with no witnesses but the fire and the stars. They spoke vows to each other, promising love and loyalty and partnership for all their days. Grenna taught Bennett the Orcish marriage ceremony, which involved binding their hands together with a strip of cloth and speaking their intentions to the spirits of the land. Bennett recited the human vows he remembered from his parents' wedding, pledging to honor and cherish her until death. When it was done, they were married in every way that mattered to them. They celebrated with wine and good food, and then retired to the bedroom they now shared, where Bennett made love to his wife for the first time as her husband. Spring came with new challenges. Word of their marriage had spread, and while many neighbors were accepting, there were still those who disapproved. One night in early March, someone threw a rock through the farmhouse window with a note tied to it. The note read, "Monster Lover," in crude letters. Bennett was furious, but Grenna was calm. "This is what I warned you about," she said. "Some people will never accept us. We have to decide how we want to respond." "We keep living our lives," Bennett said firmly. "We do not let them drive us away or make us hide. This is our home and our farm. We have done nothing wrong." They replaced the window and continued on. But Bennett started sleeping with his sword within reach, and Grenna kept her spear by the door. They were prepared to defend their home if necessary. The spring planting went well. Bennett and Grenna worked the fields together, and this year they expanded the vegetable garden and added a new section for the medicinal herbs Grenna wanted to cultivate. She had been teaching Bennett about Orcish healing practices, and he found it fascinating. One warm April afternoon, as they were working in the garden, Grenna suddenly gasped and clutched her stomach. Bennett was at her side in an instant. "What is wrong? Are you hurt?" Grenna looked up at him with a mixture of shock and wonder. "I think I am pregnant." The world seemed to stop. Bennett stared at her, his mind struggling to process the information. "Pregnant? You are sure?" "Not completely, but the signs are there. I am late, and I have been feeling strange in the mornings. I wanted to be certain before I said anything, but—" She placed her hand over her belly protectively. "I think we are going to have a child." Bennett dropped to his knees and placed his own hand over hers, feeling the flat plane of her stomach. A child. Their child. Half human and half orc, proof of their love. "This is wonderful," he breathed. "This is the best news I have ever heard." Grenna smiled, but there was worry in her eyes. "Bennett, you know this will make things harder. A half-breed child will face prejudice from both sides. Humans will reject them for being part orc. Orcs will reject them for being part human. Then we will love them enough to make up for all the hatred in the world," Bennett said fiercely. "And we will raise them to be strong and proud and kind. We will teach them that love is more important than what anyone else thinks." Grenna pulled him up and into a kiss. "You are going to be a wonderful father. And you are going to be an amazing mother." They told Martha first, and the old baker wept with joy. She immediately began knitting baby clothes and organizing the other sympathetic townspeople to help prepare. Thomas and his wife donated a crib that their children had outgrown. Hector carved a set of wooden toys. The support from their friends was overwhelming and deeply moving, but not everyone was pleased. Cole and his group became more vocal in their condemnation. There were more rocks thrown, more threatening notes. One morning, Bennett found that someone had trampled part of their garden during the night, destroying weeks of work. "This has to stop," Bennett told Thomas. "I will not have Grenna and our child living in fear." Thomas nodded grimly. "We will talk to the sheriff. There are laws against this kind of harassment." The sheriff, a practical man named Davies, came to the farm and took their statements. He promised to patrol the area more frequently and to have words with Cole and his friends. "I will not have vigilantism in my town," he said. "You too are law-abiding citizens, and you have the right to live in peace." The harassment decreased after that, though Bennett suspected it was more due to the fact that their friends had started keeping watch over the farm than any fear of the law. Whatever the reason, Bennett was grateful. As summer arrived, Grenna's pregnancy became visible. She bloomed, her skin taking on a luminous quality and her energy seemingly boundless despite the child growing inside her. Bennett found himself constantly amazed by her strength and grace, and the way she carried their child with such obvious pride. One evening in late June, they sat on the porch and watched the sunset paint the wheat fields gold. Grenna rested her head on Bennett's shoulder, his hand on her swollen belly. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said quietly. "When you bought me in that market, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never be anything more than a slave, used and discarded. But you gave me freedom and dignity and love. You gave me a home and a family. You gave me everything." Bennett kissed her temple. "You gave me just as much, Grenna. Before you came, I was just existing. Getting through each day but not really living. You brought joy back into my life. You made me remember what it is to hope for the future." "Do you think our child will be happy?" Grenna asked. "Do you think we can give them a good life despite everything?" "I think we can give them the best life possible," Bennett replied. "We will teach them to be strong and kind. We will show them that love is stronger than hate. And we will make sure they know every single day that they are wanted and loved." Grenna turned to look at him, her amber eyes shining with tears. "I love you, Bennett Ashford." "I love you too, Grenna Ashford." The name brought a smile to her face. She had taken his name at their self-marriage and she wore it with pride. Grenna Ashford. It sounded right. The baby came in early September, just as the wheat was ready for harvest. Grenna's labor was long and difficult, and Bennett paced outside the bedroom for hours while Martha and 2 other women attended her. When he finally heard the cry of a newborn, he nearly collapsed with relief. Martha emerged, her face tired but smiling. "You have a daughter, and she is perfect." Bennett rushed inside. Grenna lay in bed, exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. She looked up as he entered and smiled. "Come meet your daughter." Bennett approached slowly, almost afraid. Grenna pulled back the blanket to reveal the baby's face, and Bennett's breath caught. She was beautiful, the perfect blend of both her parents. Her skin was a lighter shade of green than Grenna's, her features delicate but strong. Tiny pointed ears peeked through wisps of dark hair, and when she yawned, he caught a glimpse of the smallest tusks he had ever seen. "She is perfect," Bennett whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Absolutely perfect. Would you like to hold her?" Bennett took his daughter with shaking hands, marveling at how light she was, how fragile. She opened her eyes and looked at him, and he fell in love all over again. This was his daughter, his child, the physical embodiment of everything he and Grenna had built together. "What should we name her?" he asked. Grenna thought for a moment. In my clan, we had a tradition of naming children after virtues we hoped they would embody. What virtue do you most want for our daughter? Bennett looked down at the baby in his arms, at her peaceful face, and her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. Hope, he said. I want her to represent hope. Hope for a better future where humans and orcs can live together in peace. Hope that love can overcome prejudice. Hope that the next generation will be kinder than this one. Hope, Grenna repeated. It is a beautiful name. Though we should give her an orcish name as well to honor both sides of her heritage. What is the orcish word for hope? Thara. It means dawn light, the hope of a new day. Hope Thara Ashford, Bennett said, testing the sound. Welcome to the world, little one. Your mother and I are so glad you are here. The baby cooed, and both parents laughed through their tears. The first few months of parenthood were chaotic and exhausting, and more wonderful than Bennett had ever imagined. Hope was a healthy baby with strong lungs and her mother's determination. She demanded attention and care at all hours, and Bennett and Grenna took turns walking her through the night when she would not settle. The farm work continued, though at a slower pace. Bennett hired a young man from town to help with the heavy labor, so Grenna could focus on recovering and caring for Hope. Their friends rallied around them, bringing meals and supplies and offering advice. But the greatest surprise came from an unexpected source. One morning in late October, Bennett answered a knock at the door to find a group of orcs standing in his yard. There were 5 of them, 2 men and 3 women, dressed in travel-worn clothes and carrying packs. The eldest, a woman with gray streaking her dark hair, stepped forward. "We are looking for one called Grenna," she said in accented but clear human speech. "We heard a rumor that she survived the destruction of the Stonefist clan and now lives in these lands." Bennett's hand went to the knife at his belt, protective instincts flaring. "Who are you and what do you want with her? I am Grenna, elder of the Ironwood clan. Grenna is my sister's daughter. We have been searching for survivors of Stonefist for years. If she truly lives, I would speak with her." Before Bennett could respond, Grenna appeared in the doorway with Hope in her arms. She stared at the orcs for a long moment, her face pale with shock. Then, barely able to speak, she whispered, "Aunt Grenna." The older orc woman's eyes widened. "Grenna, child, is it truly you?" "Yes. Yes, it is me." Grenna's voice broke. "I thought I was the only one left. I thought everyone was dead." Grenna crossed the yard in 3 long strides and pulled Grenna into a fierce embrace, careful not to crush the baby between them. Both women were crying, speaking rapidly in Orcish too fast for Bennett to follow. The other orcs came forward, their faces showing similar joy and relief. After several minutes, Grenna pulled back and gestured to Bennett. "Aunt Grenna, this is my husband Bennett, and this is our daughter Hope." Grenna looked at Bennett with an expression that was hard to read. Bennett braced himself for condemnation or anger. Instead, the orc elder bowed her head respectfully. "You married my niece." "I did. I love her with all my heart." "And you are raising a child together, a child of 2 peoples." "We are." Grenna studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "The world is changing in ways I never expected. Come, let us talk. There is much to discuss." They spent the rest of the day in conversation. Grenna explained that the Ironwood clan had survived the war by retreating deep into the mountains. They had been slowly rebuilding, searching for other survivors, and trying to establish a new territory. When they had heard rumors of an orc woman living openly with a human man and bearing his child, Grenna had insisted on investigating. "There are not many of us left," Grenna said sadly. "The wars and the enslavement have broken the clans. We are scattered and hunted, but we endure. And perhaps, if what you have built here can survive, it gives us all hope for the future. You are welcome to stay, Bennett offered. "We do not have much space, but we can make room, and I am sure the other farmers would not object if you wanted to settle in the area." Krenna smiled. "You are generous, human, but we have our own path to follow. We are traveling to the northern territories where it is said some clans have gathered. However, we would like to stay for a few days if you will have us. I would know my great-niece before we part. Of course. Stay as long as you like." The Ironwood orcs camped in the barn, and for 3 days Bennett's farm became a gathering place. Grenna was able to reconnect with her heritage, speaking her native language and learning what had become of her scattered people. Krenna taught traditional songs to Hope and told stories of the Stonefist clan in their glory days. The other orcs helped with farm work, amazed by the partnership between Bennett and Grenna. On the evening before they were to leave, Krenna performed a formal blessing ceremony for Hope. It was an ancient orcish tradition, marking the child as part of the clan and asking the spirits to watch over her. Bennett stood beside Grenna, holding their daughter, and felt the weight of history and hope settling over them all. "She is a bridge," Krenna said as she marked Hope's forehead with ash and earth. "Between two peoples, between two worlds. May she walk in both with pride and may she show others the path to peace." When the Ironwood orcs departed the next morning, there were tearful goodbyes and promises to meet again. Krenna gave Grenna a necklace that had belonged to her mother, a precious link to the past. To Bennett, she gave a carved wooden pendant. "This is a symbol of the Ironwood clan," she explained. "You are not orc, but you have earned our respect and gratitude. You are a friend to our people and you are family. Wear it with honor." Bennett accepted the gift with deep humility. "Thank you. I promise to care for Grenna and Hope with everything I have. I know you will. I see it in your eyes, in the way you look at them. You are a good man, Bennett Ashford. The world needs more like you." As the orcs disappeared down the road, Grenna leaned against Bennett with Hope between them. "I cannot believe I have family again. I thought that part of my life was gone forever." "You have always had family," Bennett said gently. "Here with me and Hope, but I am glad you were able to reconnect with your aunt. Hope should know both sides of her heritage. She will. We will make sure she grows up proud of who she is, all of who she is." Winter came again, and with it Hope's first birthday. Bennett and Grenna threw a celebration, inviting all their friends and neighbors. The turnout was larger than they had expected. Martha brought a cake. Thomas and his family came with gifts. Even Sheriff Davies stopped by with a wooden rocking horse he had made himself. The only incident came when Cole appeared, clearly drunk and belligerent. He stood at the edge of the property and shouted insults about race traitors and monster children. Before Bennett could react, half a dozen farmers moved to escort Cole away. "You are not welcome here," Hector said firmly. "These are good people and this is a celebration. Leave now or I will make you leave." Cole left, muttering curses, and the party continued. Hope, oblivious to the drama, laughed and played with her new toys, delighting everyone with her bright spirit. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Martha pulled Bennett and Grenna aside. "You have built something special here. A home, a family, a future. Do not let people like Cole make you doubt that. You are changing hearts and minds one day at a time. We are just living our lives," Bennett said. "Sometimes that is the most revolutionary thing you can do." The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. The farm prospered under Bennett and Grenna's joint management. They expanded their operations, adding more land and more animals. Grenna's healing knowledge became sought after in the area, and she began treating both animals and people, building a reputation as a skilled herbalist. Hope grew from a baby into a toddler and then a bright, curious child. She had her mother's strength and her father's kindness, and she moved easily between human and orcish worlds. When Crenna and the Ironwood clan visited, which they did every few years, Hope learned Orcish traditions and stories. The rest of the time, she played with human children and learned farming from Bennett. Not everyone accepted her. There were still people who called her names or refused to let their children play with her. But there were far more who looked past her green skin and small tusks to see the wonderful child beneath. Hope learned early that the world could be cruel, but she also learned that love and friendship were stronger than hate. One spring morning, when Hope was 5 years old, she came running to Bennett with a question. "Papa, why do some people not like me?" Bennett knelt down to her level, his heart aching. "Some people are afraid of things they do not understand. You are special, Hope. You are both human and orc, and some people think those two things should not mix. But they are wrong." "Why are they wrong?" "Because you are proof that love is stronger than fear. You are proof that different people can come together and create something beautiful. The people who do not like you are missing out on knowing an amazing person." Hope thought about this for a moment. "I do not need everyone to like me, just the people who matter." "That is very wise. Where did you learn that?" "Mama told me. She said that Aunt Crenna and you and Martha and Thomas and all our friends are the people who matter. Everyone else is just noise." Bennett laughed and pulled his daughter into a hug. "Your mama is a very smart woman." "I know," Hope said seriously. "That is why you married her." "That is one of many reasons." That summer, Bennett and Grenna made the decision to formalize their marriage under human law. The laws had not changed, and interspecies marriages were still not legal. But a sympathetic judge in the next county agreed to perform a private ceremony that would at least give them some legal protection. It was a small affair, attended only by their closest friends, but it meant the world to both of them. On their wedding day, Bennett stood at the altar and watched Grenna walk toward him in a dress Martha had made, her tusks displayed proudly, and her head held high. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. When they spoke their vows again, this time before witnesses, Bennett felt the same surge of joy and love he had felt years ago on the hillside. "I promise to love you, honor you, and stand beside you for all our days," he said. "You are my heart, my home, and my hope for the future." Grenna smiled through her tears. "And I promise to love you with all that I am. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me freedom when I was a slave. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You are my everything, Bennett Ashford, and I will spend the rest of my life showing you what that means." They kissed to applause and laughter, and then celebrated with their friends long into the night. Hope danced with everyone who asked, her laughter ringing out like bells. It was a perfect day, a perfect moment, a perfect life. Years continued to pass. Hope grew into a teenager, tall and strong like her mother with her father's kind eyes. She took over many of the farm duties, proving herself a natural farmer. She also showed talent for healing, working alongside Grenna to treat sick animals and people. The farm had become more than just Bennett's homestead. It had become a symbol of what was possible when people chose love over fear. On a warm autumn evening when Hope was 16, the family sat together on the porch and watched the sun set over the wheat fields. Hope was reading aloud from a book of poetry, practicing the reading skills her father had taught her, just as he had taught her mother years before. Grenna leaned against Bennett, his arm around her shoulders, both of them content. "Papa," Hope said, setting down the book, "I have been thinking about the future." "Oh," Bennett raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" "I want to travel, to visit Aunt Crenna and the Ironwood clan, to see the places Mama came from and learn more about my Orcish heritage. But I also want to come back here and keep working the farm. This is my home. These are my people. I want to honor both sides of who I am." Bennett and Grenna exchanged glances. "I think that is a wonderful idea," Bennett said. "You should know your whole heritage, not just the human half." "When would you want to go?" Grenna asked. "Next spring, after the planting. I thought I might spend a season with the clan and then come home for the harvest." "That sounds like a good plan. We will write to Crenna and make arrangements." Hope smiled and returned to her book. Bennett looked out over the farm, over the land he had worked for so many years, and felt deep satisfaction. This was what he and Grenna had built together. Not just a farm, but a family. Not just a home, but a hope for the future. Their daughter would walk in both worlds, and she would thrive in them both because they had loved her enough to make it possible. "What are you thinking?" Grenna asked quietly. "I am thinking about the day I walked into that slave market with 3 copper coins in my pocket," Bennett said. "I was so angry and so determined to do something right. I thought I was saving you. But really, you saved me." Grenna turned to look at him, her amber eyes soft. "We saved each other." "That is what love does." "Yes," Bennett agreed, pulling her closer. "That is exactly what love does." The sun set fully, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The wheat fields rustled in the breeze, heavy with grain. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The farm settled into evening quiet, peaceful and perfect. Bennett Ashford looked at his wife and his daughter, at the life they had built together out of pain and hope and love, and knew that he would not change a single moment of it. He had bought an orc-serving girl for 3 copper coins and handed her an apron. But she had given him everything in return: love, family, purpose, and a future worth living. And that, Bennett thought as he kissed his wife's forehead and listened to his daughter's laughter, was the greatest bargain he had ever made. The stars came out one by one, brilliant against the darkening sky. Inside the farmhouse, the fire burned warm and welcoming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, but tonight, the Ashford family was together and whole and happy. And that was all that mattered. The end of Bennett and Grenna's story was not really an ending at all, but rather a continuation of everything they had built. Years later, when Hope had children of her own, when the farm had expanded to include hired workers of both human and orcish heritage, when the town had grown more accepting, and the laws had finally changed to recognize interspecies marriages, people would tell the story of the human farmer who had bought an orc woman for 3 copper coins and somehow changed the world. But Bennett and Grenna never saw themselves as heroes or pioneers. They were simply 2 people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and chosen love over fear. They were partners who had faced every challenge together and built a life worth living. They were husband and wife, farmer and healer, father and mother, and above all, they were proof that love could bridge any divide. On the day Bennett turned 60, with gray in his hair and laugh lines around his eyes, Grenna gave him a gift. It was a painting she had commissioned from a traveling artist, showing the 3 of them on the farmhouse porch, Bennett with his arm around Grenna, Hope standing between them with her hands on her hips and a bright smile on her face. The wheat fields stretched out behind them, golden in the sunset. "This is us," Grenna said. "This is what we built. I wanted you to have something to remember it by." Bennett stared at the painting with tears in his eyes. "As if I could ever forget. Grenna, you and Hope are the best things that ever happened to me. Every day with you is a gift. Even the hard days, especially the hard days, because we faced them together." Grenna kissed him, soft and sweet. "I love you, Bennett Ashford. From the moment you unlocked those shackles and gave me back my freedom, I have loved you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you, Grenna Ashford. My wife, my partner, my everything." They hung the painting in the main room where everyone could see it. It became a focal point of the house, a reminder of what love and courage could achieve. Hope brought her own children to see it. teaching them the story of how their grandparents had met and fallen in love despite impossible odds. And in the years that followed, as acceptance slowly spread and more human orc couples began to emerge from hiding, Bennett and Grenna's farm became a symbol of hope. People would travel from far away just to meet them, to see that such a love was possible. Bennett and Grenna welcomed them all, shared their story, and encouraged them to be brave in their own lives. When Bennett was 72 years old, he fell ill with a fever. Grenna nursed him with all her healing knowledge, but they both knew his time was coming to an end. On a quiet spring morning, with Grenna holding his hand and Hope sitting at the foot of the bed, Bennett smiled peacefully. "I've had a good life," he whispered. "The best life. Thank you both for making it so wonderful." "Papa, do not leave us," Hope said, tears streaming down her face. "I will never truly leave. I will always be with you in the farm and in your hearts. Take care of your mother, take care of the land, and never stop believing in love." He looked at Grenna one last time, his eyes full of adoration. "My beautiful wife, my Grenna, you made me complete. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "As would I," Grenna said, her voice breaking. "Rest now, my love. I will see you again someday." Bennett closed his eyes and breathed his last, peaceful and surrounded by love. They buried him on the hillside next to his parents, with an orcish ceremony and a human one, honoring all that he had been. The entire town turned out for the funeral, even those who had once opposed his marriage. Everyone recognized that they had lost someone special. Grenna lived for another 15 years, continuing to work the farm with Hope and teaching her grandchildren everything she knew. She never remarried, though she had offers. Bennett had been her one great love, and that was enough for a lifetime. When Grenna finally passed away at the age of 87, they buried her next to Bennett on the hillside. Hope placed the painting of the three of them at the grave site, protected in a glass case so that visitors could see it. It became a pilgrimage site for interspecies couples, a place to honor love that transcended all boundaries. And the farm continued on, passed down through Hope's children and their children, a living testament to what Bennett and Grenna had built. The story of the human farmer who bought an orc-serving girl for 3 copper coins became legend, told and retold, inspiring generation after generation to choose love over hate, courage over fear, and hope over despair. In the end, that was their true legacy. Not the farm or the land or even their descendants, but the simple truth that love could change the world, one act of kindness at a time. Bennett had bought Grenna for 3 copper coins and handed her an apron, but what they had given each other was infinitely more valuable: freedom, dignity, love, and a life worth living. And that story, that beautiful story of love and hope, would live on forever, long after the wheat fields had turned to dust and the farmhouse had crumbled to nothing. Because love, true love, never dies. It simply transforms, becoming part of the fabric of the world, inspiring others to be brave enough to reach across divides and take the hand of someone different, someone unexpected, someone who might just become their everything. Bennett and Grenna's story was complete, and it was perfect, and it would echo through time as a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simplest choice. To see the humanity in someone the world calls a monster, and to love them with all your heart despite what anyone else might think. 3 copper coins had bought a lifetime of love, and that was the best bargain anyone could ever hope to make.